Altos is brought to you with the kind compliments of Rituals Coffee House.
Good evening and welcome to Altos, a weekly news and current affairs program produced by the Catholic News and broadcast on Trinity TV and TTT. I'm your host, Neil Parsonal. We thank you for staying with us through 2025. This is our first show for 2026 and we welcome you. Here's a look at this week's top stories. Pope Leo expresses concern at the situation in Venezuela, urging peace and regard for the people. Venezuelan bishops also react. A new deacon is ordained. His Grace Archbishop Charles Jason Gordon challenges the church to reclaim its mission. Vicar for Education, Father David Can, pinpoints some watchwords he wants to underpin education at Roman Catholic schools. And later we speak with Vicar General Martin Sergiu, who's been appointed Monsignor by the Holy Father. And now for our top story. Days after the United States captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, the United States has now seized another oil tanker in the Caribbean Sea, this one carrying a Moscow flag. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke to reporters, and we have more in this report.
Pre-dawn in the Caribbean Sea, and a helicopter swirls around a Venezuelan-linked oil tanker. U.S. forces rappelling onto the deck, patrolling for potential threats as they seize the ship. In the Atlantic, another tanker, this one Russian-flagged, is also taken by the US after a 2-week pursuit, undeniably escalating tensions with Moscow. And these are the men in charge, the Secretary of State and the Defense Secretary, fresh from a briefing with lawmakers on the military intervention in Venezuela.
Some senators who were in that briefing describing your operation variously as that you're winging it, that there's no plan for Venezuela going forward, or that this is all about enriching America.
That's what you always say when it's the other party. The bottom line is we've gone into great detail with them about the planning. We've described it to them. In fact, it's not just winging it. It's not just saying or speculating it's going to happen. It's already happening. Understand, they are not generating any revenue from their oil right now. They can't move it unless we allow it to move because we have sanctions, because we're enforcing those sanctions.
Some believe now seizing a Russia-flagged ship is a direct challenge to Vladimir Putin, but Republican senators are on message.
How might this be interpreted in Moscow?
We had made it very clear that there was no oil going in and out. This is our hemisphere, not Russia's. If they're going to operate here, we'll know they're operating here, and they will not call our bluff. We will stand up strong.
It's not just your hemisphere, though, is it?
Well, it's the Western Hemisphere, and there's no army or navy that's going to protect it better than we will.
Where's that oil going, sir? Is that oil going to the Venezuelan people, or is it going to the U.S.?
Yeah, that's the hope. No, this is for the stability of the Venezuelan people. And they've been robbed of that, again, by a communist dictator for far too long. But as an American senator, the interests of the United States of America is my chief concern.
This is an insane plan. They are talking about stealing the Venezuelan oil at gunpoint for a period of time undefined as leverage to micromanage the country.
In Venezuela, they're reeling from the attack, clearing debris from US strikes and listening to Washington for clues about what happens next. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Washington.
And Pope Leo has expressed his concern over recent developments in Venezuela after United States forces arrested President Nicolas Maduro in Caracas on Saturday and brought him to New York for trial. At the midday Angelus prayer on Sunday, the Holy Father urged justice, peace, and the good of the people.
Con animo colmo di preoccupazione.
With a soul full of concern, I follow developments in Venezuela. The good of the beloved Venezuelan people must prevail over any other consideration and lead to overcoming violence and embark on paths of justice and peace, guaranteeing the sovereignty of the country.
Garantendo la sovranità del paese.
The Holy Father concluded his Angelus appeals with an invitation to trust in the God of peace. The Venezuelan Bishops' Conference issued a message last Sunday in response to the U.S. military intervention, expressing the church's closeness to the Venezuelans. The bishops asked citizens to ask God to grant all Venezuelans serenity, wisdom, and strength. Quote, "We stand in solidarity with those who were injured and with the families of those who died. Let us persevere in prayer for the unity of our people." Unquote. The bishops rejected any kind of violence and called for decisions to be made for the good of the Venezuelan people. And days before the January 3rd incursion, the Antilles Episcopal Conference called for a day of prayer for peace on January 1. The bishops of the English, Dutch, and French-speaking Caribbean territories said while they recognize the legitimate responsibility of states to address transnational crime and uphold international law, quote, "We reaffirm more urgently than before that militarization is not the road to durable security," unquote. "War or the threat of war is always a defeat for humanity," they said. Their statement ended, "May our nations choose the path of dialogue, justice, and fraternity, and may God grant peace to our beloved region." The permanent board of the AEC has been meeting here in Trinidad this week. The situation in Venezuela was on the agenda for discussion today. And Pope Leo XIV on Tuesday closed the Holy Door of St. Peter's Basilica, bringing the Jubilee Holy Year to an end. It was a time of grace that invited Catholics to conversion, reconciliation, and hope. The pontiff processed towards the Holy Door as the antiphon O Clavis David was sung. Reaching the threshold, he knelt before the door and remained for a few minutes in silent prayer. We have more in this report.
Pope Leo XIV closed the Holy Door of St. Peter's Basilica and celebrated Mass in the Basilica for the Feast of the Epiphany, January 6th.
La porta santa di questa basilica, che ultima oggi è stata chiusa, ha conosciuto il flusso di innumerevoli uomini e donne, pellegrini di speranza, in cammino verso la città dalle porte sempre aperte, la Gerusalemme nuova. Chi erano e che cosa li muoveva? Homo viator, dicevano gli antichi. Siamo vite in cammino. Il Vangelo impegna la Chiesa a non temere tale dinamismo, ma ad apprezzarlo e a orientarlo verso il Dio che lo suscita. È un Dio che ci può turbare, perché non sta fermo nelle nostre mani come gli idoli d'argento e d'oro. È invece vivo e vivificante, come quel bambino che Maria si trovò fra le braccia e i magi adorarono. Luoghi santi come le cattedrali, le basiliche, i santuari, divenuti meta di pellegrinaggio giubilare, devono diffondere il profumo della vita, l'impressione incancellabile che un altro mondo è iniziato.
In a message to Catholic schools at the start of the new term in January 2026, Vicar for Education Father David Kahn highlighted integrity, discipline, perseverance, and mutual respect as underpinning education in Catholic schools. Laura Pickford-Gordon has more in this report.
As classes resumed on Monday, Father David Kahn, the Chief Executive Officer of the Catholic Education Board of Management, said the new term marked a fresh start, renewed commitment, and shared responsibility for learning, growth, and character formation within our community. He gave the Aaronic blessing, saying it was both a blessing and promise as it told of God's protection, guidance, favor, and peace over all who teach, learn, and serve within schools.
The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace.
Father Kahn said the prayer reminds schools that education is not only about academic achievement, but also about integrity, discipline, perseverance, and mutual respect. He had words of encouragement to the Standard 5 pupils preparing to sit the Secondary Entrance Assessment, SEA, on March 26th.
This is an important, demanding stage of your academic journey. May the Lord bless you with clarity of mind, discipline in study, confidence in your abilities, and peace of heart in moments of pressure. May you remain focused, supported by your teachers and families, and encouraged to give your best effort each day.
To teachers and staff, he extended prayerful support that the Lord will bless their work, strengthen resolve, and grant them wisdom and peace as they guide and support the pupils of Catholic schools. His message to the school community was simple.
May this term be marked by cooperation, respect, and a shared commitment to excellence.
This is Lara Pickford-Gordon for Catholic News, Altos.
The Archdiocese of Port of Spain welcomed a new transitional deacon on Monday as David Mark Villafana was ordained at the St. Francis of Assisi RC Church in Sangre Grande. Presiding at the ceremony, His Grace Archbishop Gordon challenged the church to reclaim its mission beyond comfort and tradition, urging clergy to be visibly present amongst those most in need. Altos reporter Kaelan Jordan has more in this report.
Drawing from scripture and lived experience, Archbishop Charles Jason Gordon urged Deacon David Mark Villafana to understand his new role as one that begins beyond the sanctuary walls.
The office of the deacon is not behind a desk with a nice chair in air-conditioned comfort. The office of the deacon is on the street corner.
The ordination marked the culmination of years of formation for Deacon Villafana, whose pastoral training included service in parishes across the Archdiocese of Port of Spain, as well as a year of ministry and teaching in Jamaica.
The world today does not need more teachers and ministers. The world today needs more saints. The world today needs more saints. Only sanctity will convict your generation of the truth of God.
But Archbishop Gordon reminded the deacon that calling alone is not enough. For Deacon Villafana, the ordination marks the culmination of years of discernment and personal transformation.
The story of the prodigal son speaks to my story. I was once lost. For 7 years, I was lost, found, trapped, gone through dark places, and then found the light.
At the close of the Mass, Deacon Villafana presented the Archbishop with a painting, an expression of his artistic gift and his faith journey. I am Kaelan Jordan reporting for Catholic News, Altos.
And we congratulate our newly ordained deacon. It's now time for us to take a short break, and when we return, we speak to the newly appointed Monsignor of the Roman Catholic Church in the Archdiocese of Port of Spain, Vicar General Martin Sergiu. Stay with us. Thanks very much for staying with us. We are privileged today to have on set with us our newly minted Monsignor, Vicar General Martin Sergiu. I'm stumped as to how to call you now. But Monsignor, welcome to the set.
Thank you very much, Neil. Thank you.
Monsignor, this is a title that not many of us, as lay people, understand what is the meaning of it. Does it come with a pay increase? Does it come with a new car? What does it mean to be a Monsignor in the Roman Catholic Church?
Well, no pay increase, that's for sure. No car unless the car gets old, but it's still driving quite well. It's really an honorific title. There are only 3 orders in the church, deacons, priests, bishops. So this doesn't have to do with the sacraments. It's just a recognition. It's an honorific title. that the Pope approves, and then it's conveyed to the priest via the bishop or Archbishop Jason in this case.
And we know that, you know, from comments we've seen that you've been flooded with congratulatory messages, and even coming from your hometown in Cedros.
Yes, yes.
Local boy done good.
I must say the response was overwhelming of support. I am very surprised that it was so well received. And also from persons I just happen to know, you know, passers-by or acquaintances, not people I communicate with often, but they seem to have my phone number, so they sent congratulatory messages. So I think I covered everybody in terms of those who send greetings. I answered everybody. It's the least I could do.
But your hometown, you know, Monsignor Cedros, is close to Venezuela.
Yes.
Venezuela has been in the news, and we've had earlier in our broadcast, Pope Leo expressing some concern about what is happening in Venezuela, and certainly all of us concerned about what is happening right next door to us in Trinidad. What are your views? What can the church do? How can the church, you know, where is the church in all of this? Certainly the Archdiocese of Port of Spain. Where do you see yourself as a Cedros boy living next to Venezuela? What are we saying about this?
Well, I'd like to broaden the landscape to answer that question, in the sense that, you know, one of my favorite popes is Pope John the 23rd. And also in 1963, he produced the encyclical entitled Pacem in Terris, Peace in the World. And so he asked of that peace not of political leaders or bishops alone, but rather the whole of God's people. And not just the whole of the church, but the whole of God's people must be geared in the direction of peace. And I found it very interesting that when Pope Leo was elected Pope, and he came out in front of all the people, that is what he mentioned very, very firmly about the importance of peace, because I think he saw what Pope Francis saw about the world heading to World War III piecemeal. So I'd like to take it from that broader perspective. And also, the Second Vatican Council issued no condemnation as previous councils, but except in one instance, and that is it condemned war. And so from the church's point of view, we don't support the forceful supplanting of one leader from one country. We prefer it to come from below through democratic means, and to not give up on collaboration and dialogue and on ongoing listening and being patient as well, which is easy for me to say, but when you live under totalitarian regimes, it's very difficult to live that patience. So I would say it's of concern to us. And there are two comments that are contending. One, on one hand, that we would like to have the Caribbean as a zone of peace, but as many people have responded internally, we are not at peace. And that's the reason the US president gave, that there is a threat to peace through narco-terrorism and so on. So you have that zone of peace on one hand that we talk about, and yet the state of our countries. So I think it calls upon us to look at ourselves and to be patient and be sensitive to what is happening, because remember, as islands, we are all together, we are close by, and what happens close to us in Venezuela will have an impact, or is having an impact, on neighboring islands. I also want to say that, excuse me, that Venezuela is literally our closest neighbor in terms of distance. And so we cannot afford to be enemies with our neighbors. You know, as I say, when your neighbor house on fire, wet yours, you see. And we are friends with the United States as well. So many of our Caribbean people live there and have found their fortunes there. So it's really how we can best bring about peace through reconciliation and dialogue. And it's not just my opinion, but the AC bishops.
Yes.
When they spoke strongly about peace, about de-escalation of any military activity. At one point, we were hearing about a second strike. Well, we hope that will not happen, and that all parties involved will really orientate their minds towards peace so that Venezuela can continue along its democratic track as we all would like. At the same time, let it be a learning experience for us as church and islands in the Caribbean as well, of the importance of peace and true collaboration and sticking together as a priceless body that we refer to as CARICOM.
And I'm glad you mentioned that whole concept of CARICOM and the zone of peace, which is a concept and ideal, whereas internal states are still struggling in terms of our own crime situations and that sort of thing. But there has been that seemingly a fracture in CARICOM between Trinidad and Tobago and the rest of CARICOM. Our Prime Minister has labelled CARICOM an unreliable partner. And yet still we are seeking out this peace. How can the church tangibly, we've issued a statement, AC has issued a statement, but how can the church tangibly get involved? Should the church tangibly get involved? Should the church be the mediating force perhaps in this whole thing, so that the whole question of driving home that peace becomes a closer reality?
Yes. Well, sometimes people think that the church is there essentially to solve political problems of society. I don't think that is true. It's not our number one priority. Our number one priority is to proclaim the gospel of Christ in the light of the kingdom. The kingdom, however, does have political, economic, and other overtones as well, and that's why the church has always spoken on issues like that. In some places, leaders of ecclesial communities have become mediators, in some cases church officials and so on. But as you mentioned, the AC has spoken. But I think bishops are generally in touch when they have to be with the political leaders of their country. So I think that is something that can be done, and to express that concern to the leaders. And if necessary, I would say sensitize the people as well as to what is going on, and to not see it as extrinsic to the mission of the church. Pope Paul VI had written a document many years ago, and in it just comes to mind as I'm talking to you, where he says that certain people expect certain things of the church, to solve political crises. And he says at a certain point, it's not our mission. And that doesn't mean to say that the church must not have a role in the political life of countries. But I remember also Pope Leo saying something similar some months ago. So we must have an impact, we must have a concern, because Jesus preached not church but kingdom, and the stability of nations is an important concern. But I would say also beyond the crisis at the moment, people feel as if there is day-to-day violations of justice, from the smallest level to the highest level. And I think if we all strive to be more just in what we do, and the coming reading for the Feast of the Baptism of the Lord talks about the re-establishment of justice. So I think, political leaders, people in high office, whether in private or public sector, it is important to ensure justice. I think at this point the bishops have done enough, and I am sure that if there is a need for the bishops to actually make a more direct intervention, they will do so. But they have called for a de-escalation of what is happening. And very importantly, I don't think we must underestimate the importance of prayer. That this is a time when we ought to pray, so that, because we are a small nation, we don't have military might, we can't fight anybody. And so our recourse is really to be to peacemaking, and also to prayer. And in one of the readings from the first letter of John that was read this week, it said, "This is our victory over the world, our faith." So we must not forget that.
And Monsignor, that's a good place for us to end, and certainly you can be assured of our prayers here at Altos for your continued ministry. We sure we see you again on the set, and welcome anytime. Just let us know when you'd like to appear with us again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much for staying with us. We'll be right back.
In this Sunday's issue of the Catholic News, our financial columnist Finbar Garcia offers some budgeting advice for the new year. With the carnival season now in full swing, feature writer Clysha Best speaks with citizens against noise pollution who say blasting music in a residential area is not culture. There's a report on the Archbishop's annual pre-Christmas visits to penal institutions. Psychologist and educator Dr. Margaret Naked-Chatur says this new year offers a blank canvas, a chance to rewrite your story and prioritize your mental health and well-being. And with the church commemorating the Feast of the Baptism of the Lord this weekend, RCIA catechists Nicole Poyer and Angelo Curbanali share their view on the importance of baptism and why we belong. Here's the clergy anniversary for the coming week and the coming events. I am Raymond Sims, editor of the Catholic News.
Thanks very much for staying with us. The parish of St. Philip and St. James, Chagonas, closed off their Jubilee Year events on Sunday, December 14th, with the closing of a time capsule that detailed the parish's activities. At the end of the 8:30 a.m. Mass, parish priest Father Steve Ransom signed the last card, placed it in a time capsule before closing it. Father Ransom thanked all for their part in making the Jubilee celebration a success, especially the Jubilee team for their hard work and dedication. Among the items in the capsule are the Jubilee prayer, the names of the Jubilee team members and volunteers, and tickets from pilgrimages attended. In a short procession from the sanctuary led by Jasmine Mathura, parish liturgical coordinator and a member of the Jubilee team, the time capsule was taken to the Elijah Cave, an adoration room adjacent to the parish office, where it will be properly housed for the next 25 years. And that's a wrap for our show this week. We thank you very much for viewing. Let's continue with our practices from 2025. Continue to pray for Trinidad and Tobago, continue to read your Bible and learn your faith. The Christmas season comes to an end this weekend, so we want to leave you with some Christmas caroling, courtesy parishioners of St. Paul's RC in Couva, who sang for officers at the Couva station and a home for the aged in the community. Have a safe and blessed week ahead, everyone.
Altos was brought to you with the kind compliments of Rituals Coffee House.